Chapter 1. Su. The white snow covered the green tiles of the palace walls, and the lake had already frozen. The fog was so thick that people could not see the distance between the water and the sky. A bright red gauze with the wind slightly moving, covering the slender dancer. White and greasy skin in the movement leaked a piece of spring light. Suddenly the pair of brimming water eyes cast a glimpse, and it could be called the most beautiful in heaven and earth. Ring, ring, ring. The jade-like ankle of the beauty was tied with a golden bell by the domineering ruler, ambiguously producing a few red marks, such as the fallen plum dotted, let the heart and soul sway. The man who was drinking at the top narrowed his eyes slightly and then laughed, and suddenly made a sudden attack, imprisoning the beauty into his arms. His palm staggered into the red gauze, capturing the white wrist. The body's hands were like warm jade, warm to the touch. He profoundly squeezed, the other hand lifted up the light red gauze, and fingertips lightly provoked, causing a tremble. Do not, the beauty with tears in her eyes, frightened to try to break free. Begging for mercy sounded pitiful. Back, go back. Although there were gauze curtains around the pavilion to cover, but still outside. How could, hey? The man sneered. He was clearly used to predation. Reaching out, he seemed to want to choke her, but then stopped, and turned to hold down the back of her neck, roughly leaving a trail of finger marks. Can't learn to behave. His voice was soft, like a lover's murmur, tinged with hostility, and he punishingly kissed that unappealing little mouth. The sound of the tool cracking was crisp, the sound of golden bells shaking ethereal, tight and messy. Aghia's brow furrowed and her eyes snapped open, breathing sharply and chaotically, but all she could see before her was an empty blanket of snow. She looked around, and when she looked up at the familiar plaque, engraved with the words, Shen Mansion, she was in a trance. She was dreaming again. Or rather, it wasn't a dream, it was something she had actually experienced, a memory from her previous life. Those memories, like a knife carving, were burned into her brain with a clear imprint. She, Aghia, was the most honored princess of the Northern Rong. Once the prime minister rebelled, and her parents were killed, the hypocritical and treacherous prime minister claimed that her parents died of an acute illness. But in fact he wanted to kill her and her brother. She and her brother had to flee, but they were separated on their way to the Great Shu, where they were separated again. After being separated from her brother, her maid, Liu Nu, was wounded to protect her, and was defiled by the second young master of the Shen family, the commander of the military region of Wankang City. And not only did she not seek justice for Liu Nu, but she was used as a dancer by the Shen family and offered to the fierce and notorious tyrant Xie Jie. Not a wife, not even a concubine, just a canary to be ravaged at will, a plaything. She had no status and could not even protect herself, so much so that when her brother was disemboweled and hung on the wall for public display, she could not even collect his body. The country was broken and the family was dying, so she could only end this ridiculous life by burning herself. She closed her eyes fiercely and drove that strange feeling of humiliation out of her body, barely able to suppress the cold smile at the corners of her mouth. The good thing was that even God seemed to feel pity for her and actually let her start over again. At this time, she was not yet under house arrest at Shen Mansion, and had not yet met Xie Jie. Aghia slowly opened her eyes, raised her head, and stared at the closed door of Shen Mansion in front of her. She was reborn just after Liu Nu was defiled, and this time she still failed to save Liu Nu from her fate. But this time, she must rewrite the fate of her last life, and never let herself repeat it. She wanted that high and mighty tyrant to bend over for her, to make Shen family pay the price, and to save her brother, and take revenge to restore her country. Oops, you're awake. I was going to do you a favor, and find a tub of hot water to help you wake up. The doorkeepers found her movement, laughing and teasing. Wise up. What is the identity of the second young master? Not to mention playing a maid. Even she is really played to death. No one dares to care even if you kneel to death. Shen family as military region commander mansion, holding military power, in Wankang City can be said to be a local king. Even the family's lackeys were all arrogant than the small officials in remote places. For them, humiliating a weak woman with no one to rely on was a little spice to their humdrum life, enough to satisfy the twisted psychology of showing off their power. The lackeys laughed loudly and deliberately said, Didn't I pay you a white bun? Money and goods are clear. You kneel here. What if you dirty the way of the masters? They even gave her a white bun. Even if they also took this woman into the mansion and played with her, who would stand up for them? The mocking words in her ears, word by word, all reflected her memory. Aghia clenched her teeth and looked up coldly, glaring at them angrily, her eyes slightly red. For the rest of her life, she could never forget the way Liu Nu looked when she was thrown back into their small compound, bruised and dying. She was a living human being. It was the sister she grew up with, her partner in life and death. In their mouths, she was worth only a white bun. But expecting Shen family to find conscience and severely punish the wicked was no longer possible. The bitter fruit of naivety she had already tasted once in her previous life. The victim died in pain on her deathbed. The wrongly accused ended up with a false act. The victim died in pain on her deathbed. The wrongly accused ended up with a false accusation. But only the evildoer escaped justice. How ironic. God's justice is clear. If Shen Mansion doesn't support justice, someone else will. Aghia pulled the corner of her lips and stood up shockily. A few days without food and water made her voice hoarse, but did not stop the determination. The Shen family had a strong hand in Wankang City, but there was someone else in the city that the Shen family cannot afford to offend in any way. That person was her target, the great Zus monarch, Xie Jie. Aghia's eyes skimmed deeply over the door of Shen Mansion. A cold light flashed in her eyes. She walked a few steps faster and left in the snow amidst the sneers of the lackeys. At 7 a.m., in front of the yamen of Wankang City, a pair of plain hands pulled out the wooden mallet from the rack and hammered down the red-painted cow-eyed drum. Rub-a-dub, rub-a-dub, rub-a-dub. 3 drums sounded, and the city was shaken by the Dangwon drum. Aghia was dressed in plain clothes, her hair tied up with a red plum. A few strands fell down loosely, making her flawless face even whiter. She took a deep breath, clear and pleasant voice full of grief and anger. The words sobbed blood. I have a grievance. Su, the second son of Shen Mansion,